So,
Me.
hello and good afternoon. Welcome to this latest edition of the E4M webinar series. Today, on a Tuesday afternoon, I have a very accomplished woman leader with me, Miss Nandini Dias, whom I'm sure many of you recognize and have interacted with. Nandini has had a very fruitful and illustrious career spanning decades in the media and advertising business. And in her current avatar, she leads the India operations of IPG's Lodestar UM, as many of you know. Last week, Nandini was also, as always, very gracious to accept the Impact Top 50 influential woman position. And as you know, she has the distinction of having launched over 400 brands spanning a very long career. And her company, Lodestar, manages media investments for almost 175 clients, the likes of Samsung, Johnson & Johnson, Accenture, Cadbury's, Tata, Mahindra, I can go on. It's a long, illustrious list, as I said. In addition to that, she's been part of the team identified to set up the creative agency FCB interface in India, which as you know is doing very well. And goes without saying, Nandini has been part of many most influential women lists in the advertising business. I will not go into details because that will need another half an hour. So thank you, Nandini, for joining us, and I'm really looking forward to this session. Let me start by asking you a very simple question: how are you dealing with the lockdown? We can't hear you, Nandini. You need to unmute yourself.
Okay.
Yep.
Now can you hear?
Yes.
Yes. So first, let me just say hi to everybody and thank everyone for coming, joining in the middle of a day. And 1 hour is a long time. And hopefully we will do this and you will get some new nuggets from this whole conversation. Yes. So Naval, your question. Sorry, I was wanting to say hi. You said.
So I said, how are you dealing with the lockdown? It's been four months plus. It's been tough on many people, and you are in a position of leadership, balancing career and what's happening at home, balancing your own, mental health. How have you been coping up?
So personally, I think I'm all right, which is as a, it's been tough for the business, but so personally, I'm all right. So I think that's a, but let me also say that, this whole lockdown has changed the narrative for most companies and brands, and it will alter several aspects of our business permanently. When globally, locally, if you see across sectors, companies, brands, they're actually striving, hard to stay relevant and driving innovation, building new business models and campaign to reconnect with the audience. So similarly, I think media agencies also have been morphing over the last 4 5 years. We moved from a media agency into a communication agency. We no longer look at just confining ourselves to media strategy or buying on few medium. We've expanded our scope considerably.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that has benefited us quite a bit. So, I mean, Naval, to give few examples, we've been thinking big on content. Uh, the level of competency now that we have is really high. For example, Tata wanted to do an experience center at the prestigious Bombay House. And you can imagine it has, Tata has 100 years of legacy, Bombay House, like the most prestigious building in the city. This is what they wanted to create. And everybody would have jumped at the thought of, wanting to do this. And they would have been most happy to be the person the agency picked up. They chose us. They gave us a responsibility of 100 years of legacy where we sifted through things. We, actually segregated, made stories, content stories on how we can take different streams forward, and created 6 full films. which they run really at the Tata Experience Center, and every dignitary, business or otherwise who lands up at the center sees our films. So you can imagine it's so, most people imagine that when we are a media agency, we, in
Right.
a certain area, or let's say celebrity or an influencer management. These days, for a lot of creative agencies, when they need, actor, actress, influencer, we actually bring that to the table. For example, Messi for Tata was got in for by this agent, by Lodestar. We manage client partnerships. We are into barter. So there's a lot of things that we actually have diversified ourselves into, and I think that has kept us, slightly better. I mean, at the agency, Naval, we look at have de-risked ourselves from just large clients and rate-driven pitches, and
Yeah.
I think that has stood us in good stead just now.
Very important. Very important. So, what are the other things? You mentioned 4 or 5 things you've done to move from being a media agency to a communications agency. I wanted to bring this question up later, but since you mentioned it, so apart from content, what are the 3, 4 other kind of so-called pillars that around which you've built yourself as a communication agency?
So, like I said, content. We looked at, so within the content is the celebrity and the influencer, that part of it. The second big pillar is around data and analytics. And uh, globally, last year we got a really large data company called Axiom, and which I think all of you are familiar with. That at one end, we looked at Axiom to take us forward in the whole data analytics sector. Then in the local, we've been doing a lot of work on data, and I will talk a lot more about when we, on each of these. The third part of it is just sitting on top of this data, and this is the consultancy. I think media agencies are uniquely placed today who understand brand, who
Absolutely.
understand media, who understand technology, who understand research, okay, and are able to mine data. So if you see, for example, just a research agency who is familiar with data, but they don't understand brand, they don't understand, how to actually connect from the brand to the consumer. So there's a lot that media agencies have managed to gather knowledge with, and I think that's the big difference that
Very
we
important.
are
Yes.
adding to the whole conversation.
But tell me, let me come back to what's happening currently and how businesses are getting impacted. All said and done, media agencies, the kind of pillar of the business still remains consultancy with clients around their media buying and planning. And as we know, because of COVID, uh, advertising spends have significantly, reduced in some cases, and media agencies are also pretty hard hit, right? It's a mixed bag. Some categories are spending, others are not. But this drop in advertising spend has kind of dealt a very big blow to the businesses of media agencies. What does this mean for the media agency ecosystem in the long run? Why I ask this question is that there were, trends that we've been seeing for the last 5, 6 years, reducing analytics, consultancy, content. Now, COVID is most likely to accentuate those trends, and coming along with fall in advertising spends, which will take time to recover. How do you think the shape of a media agency business will look like, say, 3 years from now, when we are all hoping recovery would have happened fully?
So, that's a lot of questions, but let me just break that up into a few perspectives. I think the current consumption of media is related to the pandemic. Yeah. And people are at home. This is unusual behavior. People have started, so when people, the current, share of media habits and the way it is, I think will go and change back again because things will open up again. So, for example, and this, simple things that you can see, like out of home, just now is completely shut. But as soon as people start moving out of a media will change. It may become digital out of home a lot more now, but out of
Yeah.
home. For example, if you see news channels, there was a huge surge, 40% surge that happened, and slowly that's tapered off. GCs were down, GCs gone up. So digital, people move to digital and OTT a lot more. So the conversation which is current is because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people who've actually taken advantage of what, the current situation is. And there are advertisers who have been waiting and watching. So that's one set of thing which is happening. And so I think it is, while directionally we have been changing, we know that there is a jump in the pattern from what it is today, but it's not going to be Hollywood or bust for certain media. Like for example, cinema, right? It's locked down today, and cinema
Won't come back.
advertising is pretty low just now. But I don't think so. In the 2 or 3 years time period from where we are, I think the pattern will shift to digital.
Hmm.
I know print is really low, but I don't think, unlike the West, we are signing off print and saying that, print is not going to work any longer. You can see a resurgence of print. You have seen the resurgence. So if you see the August spends, actually both television, radio are back to pre-COVID time in terms of actual, time, uh, the number of spots which are being aired. So 3 years from down, we are all seeing digital happening far more than it's today.
Hmm.
Obviously, it will take share from print. It will take share from, OTT will take share from television, but the changes may not be as dramatic as they are today.
Right. I think that's a good point. And that takes me to the next. I actually have an add-on question. Because media consumption patterns have changed during COVID, and it's kind of taking time. A lot of us thought that COVID is a month or a 2-month phenomena, and we'll all be back in offices in June. Are still currently working from home, and from how it looks, I think this current situation is going to prevail till possibly till November, December. And as you mentioned, that a lot of media is very badly hit. Cinema, all of us understand that the moment people are allowed to go outdoors, people will be back because the content pool is there. How do you see outdoor media? I know the topic of the conversation today is supposed to be digital, and I'll come quick to that. But I know a lot of people from the outdoor industry are also watching it. What is your outlook on the outdoor business? Since you mentioned outdoor, if you can give us a quick answer on that, say next quarter, next 2 3 quarters, how is it looking?
So I think the next 1 2 months it will yet be tough because we are yet in the midst of the pandemic. And if you see the last few days data, it doesn't seem to be waning. It's yet going strong.
Hmm.
So I'm yet, I think the next 2 months may not be very good.
Right.
But once the lockdown shuts, opens up, I think the out of home business will take off. It will come back. And interestingly, because of the whole geo-targeting conversation that we are having, and the possibilities due to because of technology, the closer the best the way that we are finding things working well is to use a combination of digital, uh, uh, out of home, to ensure that the proximity conversation or the geo targeting thing works better. So we need to start looking at out of home in a new way, and that it will bring new things to the table.
But tell me, naturally, because of the say economy and reduced spending on media,
You are,
re-
Naval, you are breaking, so I can hear only few of your words.
okay, let me just see if I can use a headphone and it sounds better. So my question was, Nandini, as we've seen in the last 4 months, a lot of inventory has come under rate pressure, and of course, outdoor has not been utilized at all. So rate is not the point there. In television, the rate inventory has come under rate pressure, And how long do you think that that situation is going to last? Because it's going to take a while before the economy comes back on track. So do you see that continuing into the festive season and perhaps beyond?
So I didn't understand what you mean by rate pressure.
On television channel,
Yeah,
companies have been under pressure on rates,
sure.
obviously because of
Yeah,
lower demand and lesser spending from advertisers. Do
yeah.
you see that situation continuing into the festive season and beyond?
So I'm hoping it does. It adds, it gives advantage to our clients,
Right.
and if we can bring in any efficiencies to the client, we are most delighted. But it can play both ways, and that's my hope. So you may find that the last 4 months, the rates were obviously there was a efficiency that we could use. The rates were much better than what we were seeing before that. And so publishers, it's possible, will try compensating that during the festival. But it is connected to the demand. If there is demand, if the current, we are in almost close to the festival season. Ganpati usually, tells us
Yes.
that the festive season is started, and we are in the midst of usually advertising and, being on air. So just now, if that is not happening, and clients have not, some clients are yet not back, then you may find that the festival is not the same as it was last year. But just now the inventory is full. So now the question is whether the inventory is full because of the pricing or because of
Yes.
demand is a huge question. And
Yes.
my suspicion is it's because of pricing and not demand.
Yeah. From the vantage point you are at, Nandini, because Lodestar handles a large roster of clients across categories, across businesses. Uh, which are the some categories that worry you as a leader, which you don't think in the next 6 7 months also perhaps will start spending the kind of advertising money they were say a year back? And what happens in terms of you to make up for kind of lost clients, so to say?
So, I mean, I think there are no surprises there. I think we've been seeing the categories which are challenged in the last 3 4 months, and travel, restaurants, consumer durables uh, have been, have had it tough.
Yeah.
I mean, FMCGs for that to that extent, adTech, e-commerce have been in much better position. Uh, the categories which we are hoping that will do well, and and there's pressure because uh, there were new rules, regulations, there's inventory, those. So
Yeah.
some of this category, like the auto categories, the whole BS6 made them change their whole technology, made things happen in a certain way. Clients were all ready in April to launch new products, and now because of the demand, things have, the production, the manufacturing has been challenged. So, but there is a need to obviously jumpstart some of these categories.
Yeah.
So that different categories have had, different challenges. But I would imagine the restaurant and the travel and some of these will take a longer than, even auto. I mean, FMCGs and all are obviously doing well, and I mean, within FMCG, of course, the products which are selling are not the upper end products, but
That's
the lower end products. But having said that, at least FMCGs are doing great business. In fact, there are a lot of clients who've been creating innovative products in this period of time, and
true.
so that's the interesting, and that those are the guys that we need to watch out and follow and take lessons from.
Tell me, I mean, auto in a lot of ways is a bellwether category for the advertising industry in many ways, especially if you look at slowdown times. FMCG companies, because of the fact that what they produce and manufacture is very essential to consumption, the the demand does not kind of fall off the cliff. So even during lockdown, you had FMCG companies that were kind of doing 60-70% of their business, and as soon as the lockdown opened, most of them were back 100%. I remember having a conversation with the Dabur team
Yeah.
in July, maybe June
Mm.
rather, and they were telling me they're back 100% production capacity. So in that sense, auto is like, it kind of combines a lot of aspects of what is happening across industries. When do you see auto coming back to, say, 100 index? If I were to ask you that, do you
Maybe
want to
eight,
make a
nine
bet
months.
in 8-9 months from now? You mean?
Yeah. So you can see auto advertising has started. So if you
Yeah.
if you watch any of the mediums, you can see on television, you can see on digital, you can see in print, you can see on radio. A lot of the brands are on. I mean, from our side, Tata, Mahindra, BMW, Toyota. All they are the clients have started advertising. The offtake has started too, but it
Yeah.
obviously is going to take time because people are not sure of how the economy is going to look at. So the people who are buying, some assumption is that these people do not want to travel by public transport, and
Yes.
because they don't want to, the need to buy a vehicle which will be personal. So if you're going to buy a personal vehicle at this point in time, because you don't, it's probably a second vehicle or your first vehicle, so it'll be one of the smaller vehicles and not the larger luxury vehicles. So I think each category now is dealing with this thing differently. According to me, auto, for its full numbers to come through, will take another 8-9 months. If you have a brand which is at the between the 5 to 8 lakh brand band, you will be doing better because you will see sales there.
That's right. Fantastic. Let me jump into now a little bit of tech and digital conversations. My first question to you, Nandini, is last 4-5 months, consumption of media across the board has gone up, no doubt. Especially media that is accessible while you're sitting at home. So television and digital, primarily these two. Uh, Television, you told us already. Have you seen significantly increased demand from clients in terms of usage of digital media?
Sorry, didn't hear that. In terms
Have
of,
you, have you seen significantly increased demand from clients to use digital media as an advertising option?
uh, uh, yes, I mean the obviously with the multimedia advertising is not happening just now. So clients, depending on which part of the funnel they are trying to drive, uh, are using different medium. So a lot of them obviously just now are thinking that you must drive the lower end and look at leads more than create desire. In fact, I think so. While they have been doing this for a couple of months, um, my advice to clients have been the other way around. So you may tap into people who are in market, but in the last 4 months, but those people who are in market may have been in market after the Jan Feb kind of advertising that they saw. But to get people uh, uh, you know uh, the economy to come back in its full form, we need to create push. We need to create desire. We need to let people know that it's okay, and
Absolutely.
that you people actually feel guilty just now for going and buying anything which is in the luxury space and out, which is not in the essential space.
Yeah.
So while we have been doing so just now the need may be pushed if we have to, but clients, depending on their budget, depending on the state that they are in, depending on their cash flows, depending on their supply chain distribution issues, have either moved, done no advertising, or at the minimum done used pull as a strategy and looked at lead and the lower funnel actions. So yeah, so you can see different sets of things.
I think that's a very good point you make, which is lead versus desire. And unless you do desire driven advertising, you will always hit a ceiling in terms of how much demand can you create from consumers. And when it comes to desire based advertising, you cannot just rely on one form of media, so to say. Then you have to go wider, you have to go across, also go on television, do the kind of big impact television advertising to be able to make consumers sit up and take notice. Another point, which is kind of in many ways related to this, Nandini, do you see increased usage of digital? So, for example, if there was a client who was spending only 10% of his money on digital, and naturally due to COVID, they've had to reduce spends, but 30% of that money went into digital. Do you see that trend lasting? Do you foresee that a year down the line that client will say, okay, I'll stick to digital, maybe 25%? So the simple question is COVID going to result into digital eating a larger share of advertising from other media at a faster pace than would have happened otherwise?
Oh, yes. So, digital transformation was happening. The shift to digital in terms of advertising has been happening. I think this has just made it leapfrog.
Yeah.
So I, but it is not just COVID. I think what we need to pull back and say is the path to purchase or the consumer journey has changed. It's no longer the linear journey that we used to see in the past. So if the path to purchase is no longer linear, it has moved to multidimensional, and if I can use the word circuitous almost, then
Yeah.
in a way each category behaves differently. Each category, needs are different, and hence you will find that the percentage of digital that will be used by different categories will be different. I mean, it is so true today too. So for example, the financial category is far more digitally skewed in terms of advertising than, let's say, the FMCG category. So even today, in terms of sheer percentage of digital, there is a wide range, and it can be in an FMCG maybe at 10%, to, let's say, a financial durable category maybe 40, auto may lie in the the 20 area, and they will be different within that space. So yes, but has it moved for India faster than it was moving? I would say yes. What would have happened would have taken the next 3 years probably to do. I think has leapfrog. I think also a huge difference will be the whole 5G conversation that will start in India, and the minute that happens, you will see a huge next jump. And I think Reliance is trying really hard to drive that conversation. The minute that happens, you will see that we may catch up to a certain extent, to a large extent, with the rest of the markets.
Fantastic. I think that answer has a few very interesting points. So tell me, digital media, and I'm talking more from an advertising point of view right now, and then subsequently we'll come to a larger marketing MarTech stack. So from a digital advertising point of view, there are multiple platforms that your roster of brands use on a regular basis. Going forward, do you see some digital media platforms doing better as compared to others? Given that COVID has allowed more sampling by consumers of digital platforms because time spent has significantly gone up, to more sampling also by advertisers. Some advertisers which were using digital media lesser or perhaps not using it at all have also jumped into that. So from the entire gamut of digital media options available to an advertiser today, which are the few, kind of interesting platforms that you see, doing well over the next 12 months? I mean, to give you an example, gaming is something I've seen that has really shot up in the last 2, 3 months. How sustainable it is, I don't know.
Yeah,
Whether, once everything is open and people go back, but the assumption is if it has shot up 50%, it comes back not to 100 base, but stays at 120 or thereabouts.
yeah.
Similarly, which are the other interesting digital media options you've seen beyond the naturally the Googles and the Facebooks of the world, which you see as winners, say 2, 3 years down the line?
You know, Naval, usually, it's when somebody asks me on televisions, it's saying, somebody's become number one, somebody's become number two, and what is your perspective? And our perspective is, every day is a new day.
That's
and
right.
different media channels, or this will be up and down. And frankly, whoever is doing well, we are with it. I don't think. I think the interesting conversation on data is about what agencies, what clients are doing on this. Because if there is a Facebook and a Google and programmatic, so I think programmatic will be one set of conversations. So there'll be three,
Yeah.
four large guys who there'll be a huge demand, and
Yeah.
so they may refuse to be part of the programmatic conversation. And then there will be a long tail end for which we've been using programmatic, and there is always yeah, a play between what's quality, what's is it all the same when you get it programmatically, a target audience, is this all the same? So I think that's one set of conversation. And the more programmatic we go, the more the platform becomes irrelevant, right? Then it's only the person who's in market, what's his intent, what's his interest, how do I segment it, and how do I reach the person, and what's the cohort that I need to reach. And it doesn't matter whether I reach it through Facebook or I reach it through a programmatic desk. So it actually makes no difference. But I think the interesting things are, how clients are looking at consumers, and how the whole adtech martech story is playing out. And for example, like I said to you, globally, when we bought Axiom, the database that came with it, the technology that came with it, the cohort and the capability that came with it, is far more interesting. And these are some of the things that I think will be a cutting edge for agencies like ours to create a big difference. So, for example, in the database that we have through Matakind, and the whole programmatic this, there are actually 132 variables which we have, which is live, and which we can create cohorts with. And the
Yeah.
minute you can start doing that kind of detail, it
That's
has
right.
data. Just now it claims 800 million Indian data on 800 million Indians, which are mapped. So now, that's the kind of interesting work that happens. And those are the kind of platforms I think that we think are interesting for the future. I mean,
Right.
you can see the client at the client, and they are obviously also building their own databases, and the MarTech tools. And that's the other interesting conversation of how that will progress, and different clients, the tools that they're using, and the work that is happening there.
Tell me, media agencies, obviously, because of the legacy of the businesses they started with, are kind of, learning this entire MarTech space, and they're doing it fast by either acquisition or ground up learning.
Yeah,
And there are younger, dare I say, nimbler companies which are upstarts run by young guys who understand, for whom, who are digital natives, so to say, who understand marketing, who understand not so much marketing, but the tech
yeah,
piece at least really well. And then you have the large, the consultants, the Accentures of the world who also kind of jumped into it. Then you have global tech companies, the likes of a Salesforce and IBM, who are also curating their MarTech stacks. So for media agencies to you know, keep focused on their primary legacy business, because the truth is that that drives the main business piece right now, and parallelly also to be able to learn the new tricks of the trade, so to say, and learn them better, faster than these new upstarts.
yeah.
How do media agencies need to involve? What are the three, four things that need to be done? Because the world, the way it is changing. 2 years back, if we had this conversation, it would be a very, very differently shaped conversation. Even if there was no COVID. Do you feel somewhere that media agencies are kind of winning the race by a long shot?
Sorry, you broke. Do you think media agencies?
Not that we win the race right now. It's kind of a close race. Some clients also depend upon external partners to kind of bring in MarTech, knowledge. Some are working with media agencies, but at the same time work with smaller partners. So, what will it take? The two, three main things for media agencies to do to kind of showcase to the client that, hey, we understand technology, we understand how CRM works, how consumer mapping journey works, we understand how funneling works, and so on.
So long question this, but let me try breaking that up now. So one is starting. I think media agency, like I said, are best placed for certain set of things. And I started off saying that just now, let's look at the large two, three holding groups, and each
Yeah.
of us have over 100 clients, and they're all
Yeah.
big, the biggest clients that you can think of. Yeah. And we understand different categories, we understand data, we can benchmark. So the kind of repository of data and information and learning that we have, I think nobody is in the same position. So for example, conversations, so we need to separate technology from analytics and insighting. So a Salesforce and a Adobe will have the technology, and they are looking at technology. And I think we advise clients that it may be the best thing to not develop it the software yourself. Take a plug and play. That's simpler. But after plug and play, I don't think the technology experts can understand the inciting. So, like you said, an Accenture or somebody else from outside comes in, but they have no practical knowledge.
Yeah.
So
And there was
they may be able to
brand
do
philosophy as well
mathematical
as
understanding of data, but a lot of our business is a leap after that data, right? It's the gut,
right.
it's the knowledge, it's the understanding of the business after assimilating, understanding all the data. So media agencies are just now in the best position to do so, and we and it has worked. We let a client actually works independently, builds their own stack, realizes that building their own stack is very, very limiting. And it needs updation on a regular basis. It's like having a media agency in-house, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
earlier, clients used to think a media agency, so I mean, a Unilever used to have a media agency which is in-house, right? Maybe, for example, the Future Group just shut their media agency, right? So having some of these things, whether you build, whether you buy, and who is best placed, from who you should buy, who has cross learnings, who has a better capability to do analytics inciting, I think we are in a really advantageous position. And because of that, I think we will be ahead of the pack. Interestingly, for Lodestar, we actually thought about some of these things 10 years back. So we have a CRM unit, and Lodestar may be almost the only media agency which has a CRM unit, which we started over 10, 12 years back. And including having a call center. So, for example, during this time, when I started off, I said that uh, uh, besides the media buying part of it, which is just its pricing and efficiencies, we have diversified quite a bit. So during this time, I think the CRM division has actually flourished. And
I
the
can.
kind of work that we have done, for example, there's a client of ours who used to run their own call center, found it inefficient because it made no sense after a point of time. The teaching, learning, grooming, conversations, that's not their core business, right? They thought it was much better to have somebody else do it. That came to us. We actually had our CRM center be able to do the last mile, conversation, because the supply chain for an FMCG, imagine an FMCG client, the last mile supply conversation was not happening, and we were working on that to actually give them a solution and delivering all that. So as so so technology and the databases and the way we work with it, I think media companies are far ahead. And now that and it's not just us, a couple of other companies also have bought big data companies who we are able to mine this data and inciting much better. I think we'll be in much better place than some of these, which are solely tech companies, which are the
But tell me
Salesforce
how
and
much
the Adobes of the world.
How much of the conversation during, pitches, for example, has now become technology?
Zero, can I say?
Yeah.
Um, you know, the all conversations around pitches, Naval, is around pricing and pricing. So they usually and this answer may actually my frustration may be evident. So all pitches usually has an RFP. The RFP is conducted by an auditor, the auditor who's never bought media in their lives. They have no connection to the media business. Their only competency is to be able to understand in an Excel sheet on a single line 5 numbers which 5 different agencies would have put, and they look line by
Dare I
line
say,
and say
you are not really invested in the brand.
they're not interested in the brand. They're
Think
just
it
interested in 5 numbers which each agency. So each agency, whichever is the lowest, they will circle that, and that's all the pitching that happens. And many clients pretend and give you actually a strategic brief, which is it's a masquerade for saying that actually we are concerned about strategy. But the real story is, even if there is a 1% difference in your rates versus somebody else's, they will give it to the person who has the lower rates. And almost so tech capability, I mean, if people like me sitting in an agency who I mean has now 25-30 years of experience, is yet grappling with tech capability, right? I need to reach out to the digital people, IT people every day. For me, it's an everyday learning. People who are sitting outside, no chance. So that doesn't is not part of a conversation ever. I have not seen even one pitch. At best, they will ask you your financial processes, which to see that your bills and estimates and everything is connected, and so there is this. But the conversation that we are having, not a chance.
tell me, that leads me to a very interesting question. I've seen this trend over the last 4 to 5 years, where media agencies, especially the leadership, increasingly is talking about how they're adopting technology, how they are becoming more and more savvy when it comes to delivering technology enabled solutions to clients. And
Yeah,
on the other hand, you have a situation, as you're confessing, that when a client calls for a pitch, he's only bothered about pricing and rates. He's not even
yeah.
talking about technology. What do you think has led to this situation where, these two sets of companies which need to work very closely are talking, two different languages? So why is the client not coming to the agency saying, okay, pricing is important, but I am also concerned about, how will you help me, my advertising, my marketing become more technology led? What tools do you have? And not let it just remain, tick box items.
So that's a difficult question, Naval, and I can only make assumptions, and different clients obviously work differently. So, to a large extent, till date, there was very less attribution that was possible for money spent. So even today, if
Yeah.
somebody says to you, you've spent so much, so the famous statement saying, after spending the money, you don't know, the 50%, which is, so there's a lot of conversation about you don't know uh, whether money is being spent right or wrong. Multimedia attribution studies cost money. Almost no client is willing to invest in that. I mean, and we've
Yeah.
been talking to many clients to say, why don't you go on a regular basis to do a multimedia attribution, because that will help. But multimedia costs a certain set. It's not a cheap and cheerful study. So that so unless you actually have metric which allows the client to clearly say that this is what has added to the sales, growth, equity, efficient, so the equity and the brand part of the business. I think it's just easier for clients to say that, okay, since I don't know what adds to the brand and the equity, let me just play on the side of efficiency. And literally, I'm seeing, a let's say, a continuum between efficiency and equity.
Yes.
And if the equity is built, often, you know, it's probably seen in some other area, right? It's not necessarily seen as a that media has built the equity.
Yes.
So I think to a large extent, then the conversation has gone into efficiency, and then the conversation and efficiency is reduced to mathematical numbers. So, so I think that's what's playing out.
But does it bother you that, I know what you're saying is absolutely right. And as you yourself know, last year, both the INS as well as the IBF had to issue statements saying, do not commit pricing on our behalf and so on and so forth. And all this we're talking pre-COVID. Does it bother
Yeah.
you that post-COVID, the situation is going to, accentuate, things will become even more focused on pricing, and the rest of the conversations will just be left out of the room?
So it bothers me not because the conversation will continue in the same way. It bothers me more because I think it's a wrong conclusion.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you read bias books on, or topic of how biases are created, this is like one of those biases, where you connect any dots to come to a conclusion, and then you think that's the right thing. So according to me, this is a wrong conclusion. Try one brand who doesn't do native advertising. Try a brand who is, only, so, used to have a lot of brands who just find the cheapest, cheerfulest, spot content. The brand will be perceived like that, because the whole conversation about a brand is the surround that you have around you. What are you associated with?
Yes.
So if you nullify that, obviously the brand is not going to be seen in the same way. And just because you cannot find a direct correlation, I
Yeah.
mean, it doesn't mean it's not happening. Which is why I say the whole attribution conversation, clients need to, spend some money to ensure that you're doing the right thing. Because if you're not going to do that, you will never get the right answer. And if you don't have the right answer, you're going to play it only one way. So, for example, I can think of brands which have been title sponsors, let's say, on a property, and they've actually been able to shift metrics on brand love, on trust, on various others. And there is empirical data across different brands. Just because it's not on your own doesn't mean the conversation is not right. And so it's absolutely critical to ensure that you have the right circumstances, you have the right content, you have the right associations, and it's not, ki 12 baje raat ko, if you take a spot, it's all the same.
Thank you. Yes. So I have lots of questions left, but because we have not much time, I'm going to take two, three of these questions, and then we have some audience questions. I'll come to that.
Yeah.
One question, Nandini. You started your career when Ramayan was the only show in town, and it used to get 100 GRPs, 100% GRPs. And the world has come a long way, in this span of 25, 30 years. If you were grooming say COO for to be ready, say 7, 8 years from today, not to say that you're going away anywhere, we hope you continue another 10, 15 years as CEO of Lodestar and higher. But if you
No
were
such
grooming
desire, but yeah.
if you were grooming a CEO to take over who you wanted to last 10, 15 years, what are the skill sets you would want that, person to have? There are some basic fundamental skill set about leadership, about, connecting with people that all of us need to have. But beyond that, how the, entire landscape has changed. What are the three, four skill sets you would want agency leader to have in the future?
So I think an entrepreneurial mindset, because this is one of the businesses which can actually change considerably. Your product is your thinking, right? And that's the only fact, that the way you think, the way we are like the consultants, right?
Yeah.
if you can spot a trend, if you can be strategically ahead, you will be ahead. So entrepreneurial person with speed, agility, and in the tech world, speed and agility are huge conversations,
Yeah.
because who latches on to the trend, and who there's how do you go to the market, what we call speed to market. How do you you know so the person who comes first will be ahead, right? Your market share may not necessarily be legacy. So you see the couple of things which have happened in the recent past, right? And during COVID period, even people who've been nimble, they have been able to gain market share in today's world, and that to pull from the biggies. So it's and there have been literally shifts of 20-25% in certain categories in the FMCG sector, because of the speed to market and the agility that some of these brands have shown. So I mean, for example, just now Amul is a great story, and I think on your channel Mr. Sodhi has come and spoken, and he it's one of the best case studies that India has in the last 4 months, of the changes that they brought to the table. And the changes are all with speed, agility, and quick thinking and taking on the trends. Like this Panchamru, you've seen the new brand Panchamru. It's an unbelievable launch at this point of time. So I think brands which you need to have this agility to think differently, and for that you need to not be in a single zone. So you need to think entrepreneurial. So I think those are the things that you need to. Everything else is evolving. Like 5G will come. You don't know what are the things that will change, and they may change dramatically. I mean, the linear TV may move to connected TV really quickly. Now, for that, you just need open mind and a way to work, and being able to do the connections quickly.
Very relevant. Let me come to you. One last question from my side about initiative you admirably led over the last few years, which is uh, uh, you know
Work
encouraging
to get to
companies
it.
to stagger work timings, to kind of have a more humane approach, especially in large cities where travel takes a very significant amount of stress on our lives. Tell me, I'm sure you've said this on platforms earlier. For many categories, for some categories it is easy. For example, in the advertising business, perhaps it is easier than in some of the manufacturing sectors. So, how is it possible to implement something which, for many categories might be unfeasible, so to say? What is the advice you have to those companies in terms of how they can, find this balance between ensuring that employees are present when required, and also not having them unnecessarily stress themselves by traveling 4 5 hours in some cases, like it happens in cities like Delhi and Bombay.
So, Naval, thankfully, because one of the advantages of COVID has been the work from home. So before, last 2 years I've been running this initiative, and often I would the problems or the questions that somebody would exactly the questions that you are asking, and they would all be around productivity and how do you tap into people, how do you ensure that people are working and they're not having fun, uh, you know. So the conversations were all like this.
Yeah.
I think COVID work from home has demonstrated that productivity is not being impaired because of the place from where you are working. So I think this is one of the first, and I hate to think that it took us a pandemic for the penny to drop, but for whatever reasons the pandemic has happened, and I think that conversation about productivity now is an easier conversation. And I think almost everybody will agree that it doesn't matter where you are, if the mindset is correct, you will productivity will happen. But I think the most important part of it is to understand that people are dying, and because of the way the infrastructure is, there is no way that you can ignore, that people will try getting into a train, people will fall off the train. So the conversation, if the starting and the understanding is that people are dying, and it's not like one or two people once in a
Yes.
while, right? Now, well, if 8 to 10 people die
Yes.
every day in by just the
That's right.
train travel
That's right.
because they fall off the train, it's not something that you can ignore. I mean, it is, when I started this whole thing, I said it often to everyone, it's more than the number of people who died in Kashmir. And that's silly in a city. So if we can't change our infrastructure and if that's going to take time, I think it is, we are duty bound to figure an alternative. And so you can't shut yourself in saying, I'm only going to think of me and myself and my productivity. We need to think of people because one day somebody of your, house, from your home, from your office is going to travel by that train and going to follow. Thankfully, the last year it has come down dramatically now. So when I started off, they were almost 3,300, people every year prior to that dying. Last year has been good. It came down to 417 people. But unfortunately, the social distancing conversation that we are having, I don't want, for a different reason, things to start again. So even more reason now for flexi timing, staggered timing. So yeah,
Fair
that's
point. Yes,
again.
absolutely. And I mean, I must commend you on the initiative that you've been leading tirelessly over the last few years. And as we can see, COVID will only accelerate that. And a lot of companies are realizing that they need to move in that direction. I'm going to pick up audience questions now. There's a question from Mona Jan. It says, Hi,
Hi,
Nandini.
Mona.
Like you said, that there is a lot of investment and focus on data and analytics. How can the media agencies move advertisers to create metrics through usage of these and create pricing strategy than just looking at pure bark numbers as a driver of measuring efficiencies?
So, Mona, I'm not sure I completely understood your question, but are you asking, saying that should we be moving away from the efficiency that
What she
bulk?
means to ask is, rather than using just bark data as driver of pricing strategy,
Yeah.
since media agencies are working a lot with clients on data analytics, why can't those also become an input into driving, pricing strategy rather than just bark data?
Oh yes. So Mona, we totally use them. For example, and let me give you a simple example on print. The conversation on print for the longest time is that print is waning. It's not. It's expensive. It may not necessarily work. And so at some point of time, I decided to do the whole analytics bit and the data, for and the attribution work on print. And so for almost all our print-led clients, we do this attribution now. And the yardstick for pricing is no longer just what publisher tells us. So it's very connected to the leads and to the quality of the leads too. So every ad, every page position, everything is monitored, and we are willing to give a higher rate or a lower rate depending on how your conversion is. And so we are no longer, let's say, using an IRS or a circulation numbers to say which publication is number one, number two. We are using our analytics data to say which publication is more desirable for the category. And now across so we have been doing this for few categories. Across categories now there is a learning curve which says that if it's a brand which is let's say an auto which is 5 to 10 lakhs, which publication and which position works better as opposed
Very
to
interesting.
a 30 lakh brand and which publication works. So there is that kind of granular data. So yes, we're moving similarly to other this. So yes, the answer is we have been moving. It's besides the point that sometimes the auditors have got into the act, and the auditors ask you a single metric of comparison, which is sans any,
IRS.
yeah, sans anything else. So it's okay. I mean, so that we many times have play this dual thing, saying what's in it for the what do we have to show the auditor, and actually what's working and what's with the clients and
Very
what should be
interesting. And I'm
explained.
sure publications will be happy with that because a lot of them have been insisting that only readership or circulation figures are not the right matrices to go by.
Yeah, and Naval, we found that many times it's not just the number one publication, Nestle, who's getting the best leads. Sometimes it is the number three publication, and we moved money to the number three publication if that's the story. So there have been different learning curves for different categories and brands.
I have another question from Anirudh Kalia. Anirudh, as you might know, used to be part of the Star Sports sales team till last year. His question is, why amidst so much tech disruption, media remains slow to adapt? For example, radio did not prepare for streaming, MSOs did not do anything on subscriber management systems, TV did not do anything to collaborate with digital, news didn't build its content delivery networks like NYT.
So it's just difficult decision, frankly, for media companies. Let's again take television to OTT. Okay, uh, you know, many of the television channels have been profitable, making money. Yeah, opening up a new stream, they're also being cautious. For
Mm-hmm.
example, print. Print makes disproportionate money on the newspaper as opposed to the dot com. So the way dot com is priced as opposed to how print is priced is different. So shifting, the two is a difficult decision, and it you need to be in the new, but you don't. What is a cash cow for you? You don't want to give that up really quickly. So obviously there are the difficult answers to that. But let me say that this COVID will bring a lot of this tech changes. And the simplest we are hoping are, at least from our end, stuff which is, a lot of manual stuff that happens at individual, publishers' end. So, even today, for, silly things, Nawal, for example, digital billing doesn't happen. I don't see why. That's the simplest things to move, right? So unfortunately for us, these 3 months has been, there couldn't be any physical this, right? And the first couple of weeks, people struggle over digital signatures. And a digital signature could have been done 10 years back. Yeah, but it's just happening now. So there are some things which for is just resistance to change, and there
Yeah.
are some which are very financially connected, and hence the decision on which side it should tilt at this point of time. If a competition moves, it's like the famous a very large publication which used to be number one for many years. So I asked him, saying, why won't you go up and increase? He's saying, I won't get any more business, right? So why publish more? This is the number one gets an X amount, so there is no incentive, or there is no need for me to increase my circulation and to get more
And in
papers. And
India, printing more means making more losses on at least
yeah, yeah.
circulation.
So these are, I think that's the decisions that some of these medium, channels and publishers take.
Fantastic. So I have two, three more questions. I'll take them up and wrap this. One question which I also had, I'll combine it with this couple of others. It says, this is from Anurag Agarwal, which is that what are the consequences what are the consequences going to be that originate due to rate pressure? As touched upon,
Sorry, Naval, you broke again.
what are the consequences going to be that originate due to rate pressure? Should one bow down to that pressure looking at long term perspective, or are there other alternatives to that for especially broadcasters? And I'll combine that with another question, which is that because of rate pressure, it is also impacting talent and career growth at the media end, and it is also impacting agencies significantly. So one question, what does one do? I'm not sure you have a general advice for everybody.
No,
Your thing should be okay. Give us the
so
rates that we want.
no, so I in the idealistic world, which I know is nowhere close to idealistic, I think you should have a MRP pricing, so to speak.
Yeah.
and you say what your pricing is, and you can change it once a month. For example, adTech tried it, and I think it worked beautifully. It's besides the point, it is the number one, it was the number one channel, so it could hold to its principle for a long period of time. So very clearly they used to put out pricing, they used to tell you which, how big, small as a client you are, and which cell you fall into, and that's the pricing you would get, right? It may, save so much of time and energy of a lot of people if we know that the other side is going to keep things as to
Transparent
what they
pricing.
have, yeah, and transparently.
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
problem is because it's, perishable good, it is competitive, there is, everybody's, so things keep changing. And so even 10 minutes before, it's like airline pricing, right? Sometimes you don't know whether to book really quickly or to
Yes.
book last.
Great. Yes.
So a lot of agencies are, and everybody is, trying between the two to see what's the lowest price that you can get. And so the whole, so it's a difficult call, frankly. And I wish to hell that MRP pricing happens on media. I think we can save so much of our time and energy in doing all the
Absolutely.
new things, the whole analytics and automation and attribution that we're all talking these days. You need to free up this time. If media buying is, a little more structured, I think we can do a lot more for,
Well,
for the
just
agency and the client.
just an off the cuff remark. Do you think a kind of grid can come from the media agency side where you say we've done our research and this is the grid from our side, this is what we pay,
We would love it. We
this is our
would
rate?
love it. You know, uh, so, if they can, it can be anchored. I know it's utopian. I know it is impossible. First the auditors will run out of businesses, so how they will not let it happen. The broadcast, so it's not going to happen easily, but I wish it can.
Okay, last two questions. This one is about agencies. As an agency leader,
Yeah.
what is your point of view on advertisers dropping spends, resulting into losses at agencies end? Will this impact career growth of talent at the agencies end? How do you ensure the same is taken care, and how are you handling the job security concern at your company?
So, again, multiple questions in that question. So, how are we handling it? We haven't done any job cuts yet. So, I think the way we've handled it is to the seniors, and a couple of us have taken a cut. So that the rest of the organization yet remains with is steady. So that's the and that's still now. So you don't know how long, Naval, this will keep going on. As of date, this is the decision that we have taken, and so it's just the seniors, couple of us affected. The rest of it is all intact. We are hoping it will jump back. Our clients, having a conversation. The clients are trying themselves to get out of their situation. So I don't think they're particularly sympathetic to any partner. And like we are trying to optimize our costs, they are trying to optimize their costs. So you have a lot of clients who have not been sympathetic, and who are asking to see how can we reduce the cost burden for them. Um, if you're in a commission structure, it's simple because they just don't spend. Unfortunately, you're sitting on a whole team and you don't know what is to be done. So I mean, so it's a tough conversation, and it's a tough circumstances that we are in. I think the positive part of it, or the way I've looked at it, is at no point would we be able to reskill the whole organization for the new norm with this kind of intensity ever.
Yes.
So I have used this period to actually upskill, diversify even more. And upskill means literally, Naval, we are doing 1 half day every twice a week at least, and upskilling on various things. So for example, e-com is a big conversation just now. So just e-com, what is e-com strategy, how do you look at it, what's the analysis, what's the, how do the analytics happen on it, how does it dovetail into the overall strategy. So a lot of it, so analytics, how the play that can be, how to create cohorts, how do you create HVAs. So there's so much of conversation about upping the whole strategic competency, to becoming more and more consultants, and to be able to do this bigger, better than anybody else. And like I've said, I said it twice now, that media companies are best placed. We are now looking at seeing how to hone everybody and get them up to speed to ensure that they are seen and preferred partners to clients.
Fantastic. Last question, naturally, before we go, has to be about IPL. IPL has been announced. It's starting next month. Two questions. One, it is widely believed that IPL, both viewership on television, digital, will go up this year, right? And I'm sure a lot of people who are watching this, and you also share that sentiment. What is your belief on the fact that, one, what is the appetite in the market right now for IPL? Is a big brand property, and as you yourself said, a lot of companies right now are in the kind of lead generation mode and lesser in desire creation and brand
Yeah.
building mode. And the other part of the equation is, which Star has already announced, that advertising rates for IPL are going to remain same and they're not going to change it. So what's your view on, how it is going to pan out? Because I'm sure you've already had discussions with your clients who are keen or who've been on IPL in the past. What's your take on this?
We've always, I'm a sports buff, so all sports totally excite me. We in the all the last past IPLs, we've been you know the probably the largest buyer of IPL and have associations, and number of our clients have been on it. And I dare say we may be probably number one in the in the amounts that we buy. So even this IPL, according to me, the viewership will be super. We've not seen live sports for a while, so we're all dying to see live sports. We are at home, so the possible, so usually if there are two matches a day, the evening match gets a better rating than the earlier match, because the 3:34 match you may probably be working, but you're at home this and you can have parallel, you can be working, but your screens may be on. I also believe television will do better, because if you are in a place where you can see a bigger screen, you will watch on a bigger screen. So, my take, so it's probably, it's a hunch, but I would imagine that people will watch on a bigger screen, because you're not traveling, you're not, so when you're outside, you're in a move, to watch an update on the small screen works, but when you're at home, you would prefer the big screen. So this is the first part of it. The second part of it, because it's the right time, which is the festival time, we need to create push, because if you don't create push, this whole festival will go away. And I totally, and we've been talking to this, that, you may have great ratings and you may have some advantage in terms of pricing. Now, what the advantage is, I think each one is working differently, but I'm assuming, if, just the conversation on Vivo, right? And who's got it for 400 crores, and now the ask may is almost half. So you may, I mean, we are all hoping that the pricing is, something that we can work around with. Just now, Star is holding on to a large part of their pricing, but it's also a demand, situation. If there is demand, then it will be different. But if the demand is not there, we may get a great pricing advantage, and people who tie up early, I guess, will get some assurance on the pricing advantage. So to me, I think, it can't get better than this. And I've been advising clients, that this is the time. I mean, the leapfrog that we want happening in terms of visibility, in terms of push. This is it. and we should try being on it. And as you can see in the papers, Tata is one of our clients, Amazon is one of our clients. So so that's
Brilliant.
the conversations are on.
Fantastic. Thank you. We are out of time, Nandini. In fact, we are over time. Thank you for a very candid conversation, very insightful conversation. I hope people who joined it enjoyed this. Anybody who has further questions, I'm sure you know Nandini, you can take it to her. Thank you for spending your Tuesday evening with us. Until next time, goodbye. Thank you, Nandini. Have a
Thank you,
nice
Navak.
evening.
Bye bye. Thank you.